In this video, I'm going to show you how I've added some pocket holes to my board in order to store some small screwdrivers and such while I'm disassembling my electronics. So the first thing I've done is that I wanted to make these pocket holes 10 millimeters deep. So I've set up my table saw to only cut 10 millimeters deep, knowing that the boards are 17 millimeters in thickness. I should have enough to actually have wood underneath. So after doing this, I have then used a little piece of wire just to open up the guard on my table saw, because I was going to use it like a chop saw. Now, this is not really something I recommend anyone doing. It's dangerous, and if you don't have a chop saw to do it correctly, this is just a redneck way of getting yourself killed. So when I was doing this, I was being extremely careful. But I definitely do not advise someone else, because I don't want their blood in my hand, in my conscience. But what I've done was just set it to the 10 millimeters depth, and being extremely careful, just used my table saw like a chop saw, and the worn out or cut out the excess wood out of a spare plank. Now this piece of pallet wood that I've used was just for training purposes, but I was so pleased with the end result that I've decided to use it as the main piece of wood to expand my board. So that's why the footage is a bit wonky. But after cutting it with a circle saw, I have then used a grinding barrel from my drill to smooth out and make sure that I had the correct shape that I wanted. So I was looking for a kind of half moon shape drilled into the wood, just so that the screws would sit in there and not fly away when I was trying to store them. So here's the change the drum. The drum was worn only on one side because of the way I was using it. So I just rotated the drum around to make full use of the drum. And then in order to do the more precise ending of it, I've used my Dremel with the same type of drum, but because it's a Dremel and it's easier to grip, you can do a bit more precise movement with it. And there you can see I've got it in place. And it's good enough to hold small screws, which is what I intended. So then I just needed to do the same hole multiple times on the board, and the way I've done it was just take the approach of measure twice and cut once. So here I'm just measuring what's the distance between the two edges of the cut to the board right now, so that I get a good idea of how far from the table saw I can rest my my supporting plank. And here I'm just making sure that I can measure it twice, setting up the plank again and clamping it into place so it won't move. And now my table saw, my circular saw, can fit in nicely in its place and drill cut the next hole, as you see from the picture. So with this technique, I've managed to get fairly precise holes that will do the job very nicely. So after repeating the process a few times, 8 times in fact, I ended up with a single pallet wood board that had the indentations in it that I wanted to store all of the fasteners that are removed from any electronics that I come out, that I decide to take apart. And here you can see the result. Well, first of all, clean some of the dust, and here you can see the result. So this is just after finished. Then I gave it a quick run with some different sizes of screws and such, just to see how it would feel to pick up the screws from those indentations, and I was fairly happy with it. And using the same wood stain that I've used in the previous video, I've just made sure that this pallet wood looks similar to the other pallet wood. And waiting for it to dry. Once the wood was dry, I have just picked up my baseboard that I used in the previous video, and I have just glued this extra board at the end of it, making the total size actually bigger. Now in this specific scenario, I didn't want to add any casters or anything to put the wood under pressure. So what I've done was put a wood plank on the top, causing pressure, and because of where the clamp sits, what I've done is put pressure with my hands, as you can see from this, and while exerting pressure with my hands, I've clamped the wood down. And this made the two pieces of wood be under pressure for the next 24 hours while the glue was drying. So the next day, I just unclamped the cover and gave it a little bit of a test run to see if it was well glued together or not. So you can see from here that I'm going to be shaking the board in a second just to make sure that it's not coming apart. And I was pretty pleased with its result. So, well, this is the second part. If you like this, there will be more videos on this topic. And thanks for watching. Put a like on the video if you like this project, so I will know what kind of stuff you will want to see from me in the future.